Alfabet by Christensen. 1989. A. Aprikostræerne. The apricot trees exist. The apricot trees exist. B. Bregnerne. The ferns exist, and blackberries, and bromine exist, and hydrogen. C. Cikaderne. The chickadees exist. The chicory, the chrome, and the lemon trees exist. The chickadees exist. The chickadees, cedar, cypress, cerebellum. De, duerne. The doves exist. Dreamers, dolls, the killers exist. The doves, haze, dioxin, and the days. The days exist. The days, the death. And the poems exist. The poems, the days, the death. I efteråret. The autumn exists. The aftertaste, the afterthought exist. And the one room exists. The angels, the widows, the moose exist. Simplicities exist. Memories, the light of memories, and the afterlight exist. The oak tree and the elm tree exist. And the juniper bush, the unity, the loneliness exist. And the eider and the spider exist. And vinegar exists. And afterlife, the afterlife. F. Fiskehejren. The heron exists. With his grey-blue arched back, he exists. With his feather top black and his tail feathers light, he exists. In colonies, he exists. In the so-called old world, also the fish exist, and the fish eagle, and the ptarmigan, the falcon, the partygrass, and the sheep of colors. The fission products exist, and the fig tree exists. The errors exist, the grave, the systematic, the random, the remote control exists, and the birds, and the fruit trees exist, and the fruits in the fruit garden where the apricot trees exist. Apricot trees exist. Apricot trees exist in countries where the heat will produce exactly this color in the meat which apricot fruits have. G. Grænserne. The borders exist, the streets, the oblivion, and grass, and cucumbers, and goats, and broom. Excitement exists, the borders exist. The branches exist, the wind which lifts them up exists. And the branches have a peculiar drawing from exactly this tree, which is called the oak tree, exists. Which exactly this tree, which is called the ash tree, the birch tree, the cedar tree, exist. And this drawing repeated exists. In the gravel of garden paths, also crying exists. And ramgoat and mugwort exist. The hostages, the grey goose, and the chickens of the grey goose. And the guns exist. A mysterious backyard, overgrown and only decorated with currant. The guns exist. In the middle of the lit chemical ghetto, the guns exist. with the old-fashioned, peaceful precision. The guns exist. And crying women exist, saturated like greedy owls. The scene of the crime exists. The scene of the crime, drowsy, normal, and abstract, showered in a whitewashed, God-forsaken light. This toxic, white, withered poem. H. Viskningerne. The whisperings exist. The whisperings exist. The harvest, the history exists. And Halley's comet. The armies exist. Hordes, rulers, caves, and inside the caves, half shadow. Inside the half shadow, sometimes hairs, sometimes leaf drop in front of the cave where the ferns exist, and the blackberries, sometimes hairs, hidden under the leaf drops, and the garden exists, the garden art. The elderberry tree, its white immovable flowers like a hissing hymn, and the half moon exists, the half silk, the whole heliocentric haze, which has dreamt these devoted brains, their luck. And the skin and the houses exist, Hades, which houses the horse and the hound, and the loveliness of shadows, hope, and the river of revenge, hail, under a stone heaven exists, the light shining blue, or greenish sleep hazes, sometimes pale red, of the hydrangea. Single flakes, sterile, exist. And under the slope of the heaven, Armageddon spreads his poison. The poison helicopter, like a rushing harp, over a shepherd's back, wheat and linen. Shepherd's back, wheat and linen, this last hermetic text, which otherwise is only written by children, and wheat. The wheat in the wheat fields exist. The wheat fields staggering horizontal knowledge, the half-time, the hunger, honey, and deep in the heart, which is otherwise only deep inside the heart, the roots of the hazel bush. The hazel bush exposed on the mountain of the heart. The hazel bush, sturdy and frugal, like a cluttered everyday life of the order of the angels. Quick, hyacintic in his devotion to life, as in heaven as it is on earth. Istiderne. The ice ages exist. The ice ages exist. The ice of the Arctic Ocean and the kingfisher's ice. The chicories exists. The chickadees, the chrome yellow iris, the blue, the oxygen especially, exist also on the ice flakes of the Arctic Ocean. The polar bear exists, stamped like a fur with a social security number. He exists, doomed to his life, and the kingfishers mini dive into the blue frozen creeks of March exist. If the creeks exist, if the oxygen in the creeks exists, the oxygen especially exists where the chickadees' eye sounds exist, especially the chickadees' sky, like a bluing dissolved in water exists, the chrome yellow sun, the oxygen especially. Of course it will exist, of course we will exist, The oxygen we breathe exists. The fire eye, the fire crown exist, and the heavenly inside of a lake. A fenced cove with a bit of rush will exist. An ibis bird exists, and the movement of the mind blown into the skies exists like oxygen vortices in sticks. And deep inside the landscape of the wisdom, the ice light. The ice identical with light, and deep inside the ice light, nothing. Vivacious, intense, like your gaze through rain. This pouring, life-stylizing, fine rain, in where, like a gesture, the 14 gates of crystal exist, the 7 crystalline systems, your gaze, like in mine, and Icarus. Icarus helpless exists. Icarus wearing the melting wings of wax exists. Icarus pale, like a corpse in plain clothes exists. Icarus underneath where the doves exist. The dreamers, the dolls exist. The dreamers' hair with the loose patches of cancer strands. The skin of the dolls sewn together with needles. The mysteries, the sleeves of the riddles, and the smiles exist. The children of Icarus, white as lambs through the grey light. Of course they will exist. Of course we will exist. And the oxygen of the crucifix of oxygen, like haze, will exist. Like wind, we will exist. As the iris of the rainbow in ice plants, glittering buds, the straw of the tundra, like small, like young, we will exist, as small as a little bit of pollen in peat, as a little virus in bones, as water plague, maybe as a little bit of white clover, wedge, a little bit of sliced chamomile, exiled to the re-lost paradise. But the darkness is white, say the children. The paradise darkness is white, but not in the way white like a coffin is white, if coffins exist, and not in the way white like milk is white, if milk really exists. White, it is white, say the children. Darkness is white, but not in the way white like the white existed when the fruit trees existed. They're blooming so white. The darkness is whiter. The eyes melt